Last month, you may remember, we talked to the wife of the British journalist and commentator Sami Hamdi, an outspoken critic of Israel who was arrested in the United States by the US Immigration Control Enforcement Service, or ICE. He'd been lecturing, but apparently the State Department considered him a supporter of terrorism who threatened American national security. Well, Sami joins me now, just back in the UK after experiences he did not expect. Sami, before we come on to why they lifted you, just tell me about exactly what happened to you originally.
Thank you for having me, Andrew. So I was going to America, lecturing and talking about what was happening in Palestine and in the Middle East quite generally, a number of issues, Syria, Saudi Arabia and the like. And 2 weeks prior to my arrest, there was a group of far-right individuals, Dinesh D'Souza, Ted Cruz as well joined in, and then a lady called Laura Loomer, who openly came out and said, there is somebody from the UK who is lecturing in the US, talking against the Israelis. We need to get his visa revoked. So on the Monday, I sent this to my lawyers. I said to them, guys, there's a social media campaign to get my visa revoked. They didn't pay too much attention to it. On the Wednesday, Laura Loomer tweeted that she'd gone to Congress and met in the State Department, and that, quote, I have good news coming for you in 2 days about a certain, whatever, she mentioned some accusations there. And then I gave a talk in San Francisco on Friday, Sacramento Saturday. I was supposed to fly on the Sunday to Florida and then New York and then home. When I got to San Francisco airport, went through security, looked up to see where the gate is, D38, to fly to Tampa. Somebody walks up to me and says to me, excuse me, are you Sami Hamdi? I said, yes. He said, Homeland Security, your visa was revoked 2 days ago, so now you're here illegally. I said, no one told me my visa was under review. I have a 10-year business visa. It's until 2028. It doesn't expire. They said, well, here is the memo from the State Department. It didn't list any accusation. It didn't say why the visa was revoked. I told them, okay, I'll just book the ticket and go home to London. They said, that's not how this works. Then they told me to get into a black car, like the stuff you see in the movies. I told them I need to inform somebody. They said no. Then I told them I'm not getting in the car unless I inform somebody. I called the Civil Liberties Organization. Then when I said, let me call my family, a lady behind me grabs me, pushes me against the car, cuffs my hands from behind, throws me in the car. And for the next 6 hours, I'm just being taken to a random location without any access to a lawyer behind a van. You know, they swapped me in a vehicle. And then afterwards, you know, a process of 2 weeks would take place. 2 federal judges would come out and say, we are seriously concerned about infringement of freedom of speech. Then they tried to argue, the other side, that the federal court had no jurisdiction to discuss an alien's right to freedom of speech, as they put it. The federal judge responded within the hour, saying we do have jurisdiction and we are concerned about freedom of speech. The following day, my lawyers were contacted, something very rare in immigration. They were contacted and the government essentially said, is there any way we can just clear this up, that we can just make this easy? We're willing to pull some strings and let him go home. And I agreed to the deal and went back.
And how were you treated during that period? Where were you, in a prison cell or what?
So they took us to this detention facilities, more than 90 people in this sort of small hall. ICE were quite aggressive, to be honest. I was sick within 1 day due to the food, and then had stomach problems for the next 6-7 days. I remember on the second day, I was in real agony, my whole left side, to the point where I genuinely thought I had burst the kidney or that burst the spleen. When I told them that I need to see a medical doctor, they shrugged their shoulders and said, we've informed medical, they'll come when they come. 1 hour passed, 2 hours passed, and I'm in agony, Andrew. I can barely walk. In the end, this guard says to me quietly, she says to me, if you want them to come, drop now on the floor. Otherwise, they're probably not coming. So then I called my wife. I said, go and tell them I need a doctor badly, like call the media, because they're not. And the doctors came running after the media caused an uproar, and then afterwards, and that. But it was. So that was. It's a dehumanizing condition for anybody.
Certainly is. Now you were lecturing about the Middle East and about Gaza. You know, there is, as it were, a line between criticizing the state of Israel and being or appearing to be supportive of Hamas themselves. Are you absolutely sure you did not cross that line?
I am absolutely certain I didn't cross that line, because even the video that was stitched together by this far-right Israeli organization called Memory, the lawyers found it inadmissible in court. The lawyers who were, the DHS, which was trying to accuse me of it, didn't bother bringing it to court. And even on the charge sheet, Andrew, in public, they were making all these sorts of accusations. They didn't once make it in the court. They didn't put it on the charge sheet. They didn't mention it to the judge. It wasn't in any of the legal papers because they knew it was inadmissible as evidence. And they knew that in the same lecture where those clips are stitched, I denounced the violence in that whole lecture.
Well,
and that's why
there's a big irony here that two people have been the victims of clips being stitched together. You're one, and a certain Donald J. Trump, I think, is the other.
And the BBC boss ended up being resigning as a result of it. So
maybe the same will happen in ICE. Anyway, you are separated from your family. You've been reunited with them since. Just tell us a little bit about how that was when you finally arrived back in the UK.
It's a wonderful moment. You know, I'm born and raised in London. London is my home. Wembley is my turf. You know, it was lovely to come home. But I think more than that, the overwhelming support from ordinary Americans, from ordinary Brits who came out in force, and you could hear it even within those detention facilities themselves. And I think there was an appreciation, and I want to make this particular point, that I think people understood this wasn't an attack on me specifically. It was an attack on the freedoms of ordinary Americans and ordinary Brits. This wasn't about Sami Hamdi. This was about restricting the freedoms of ordinary citizens to talk about a genocide or any issue for that matter. And I think people understood this. And I think this is why, at the end of the day, with my returning to London, with the Americans saying you can come back anytime, just apply for a visa, with the way that I wasn't deported, no charge and the like, I think it's clear that in this particular round, the extreme pro-Israeli lobby that is seeking to shut down discussion of the genocide, they emphatically lost. Because the federal courts and the sane heads at the State Department, and I just want to highlight this particular point, Andrew, just very quickly, the sentiment that was given to the lawyers was that Laura Loomer had asked a friend in the State Department to revoke my visa, and other members of the State Department said, "Who on earth listened to Laura Loomer? Yeah. What on earth are you doing?" So calmer heads prevailed.
It does sound like a modestly sized victory, but for now, thank you very, very much indeed, Mr. Hamdi. Great to talk to you.